Howdy, my name's Yojimbo Blade, and today we are talking about the latest and greatest electric attacker, Cissia. She is a snake, and she really does like to eat. That's the joke. I didn't have much for that. I've been at the hospital most of the day with my grandma, and that inspired me. Because the Caduceus staff is 2 snakes on a pole. What's Cissia's weapon? It's basically 2 snakes that are a pole. First off, here's the quick synopsis. I'm not gonna save this for the end. Cissia is good. She's good. She's not weak, and she's not amazing. Is she worth pulling? That's a fantastic question. To summarize, if like, oh, is Cissia good? Yeah, she's good. But here's the problem. She is a niche character. She is a very niche character. And you have to ask yourself, is this character good enough for their niche? She's essentially a sub-DPS and a support for a very limited group of agents. Now, that could always be expanded, but we don't know. She is basically Orphe but electric. Orphe isn't bad. Orphe is just incredibly niche for an Aftershock DPS when there's really only one real Aftershock DPS. Cissia is an electric support / sub DPS, and there are a lot of electric agents, so she's going to be good with them. The question is, will she be ideal with them, right? In that sense, she's almost like Lighter, where it's like, yeah, you can put Lighter onto any fire and ice team, but is Lighter worth that spot if you have to build around his additional? Overall, she is a great support for one character, and that character is Seed. And otherwise, she is decent on her own. She's not gonna break your account. Like, if you pull for Cissia and you can't beat electric bosses, like you literally cannot even get an A rank in Shield Defense or Deadly Assault if you pull for Cissia. I don't think that's a Cissia problem, because when Cissia comes out, they're going to make some electric stuff for her. If you pull for her and you can't even get an A, I don't think that's a Cissia issue. I think that might be, hey, let's look at our builds a bit. Let's look at our characters. Let's look at our gameplay a little bit. But because of the nature of Cissia's kit, she has some really weird, really funny team building options. None of this is going to be super leaked info. I might talk about her W engine, but it hasn't officially been revealed yet. I can't remember. Let's look a bit about Cissia's additional and ultimate buffs. When another character in your squad is a stun character or shares the same attribute, while possessing Venom, Venom is her special stack. I'm going to insert some like Venom Web, like stuff from Marvel Rivals or Marvel vs. Capcom of Venom saying Venom stuff.
Venom Rush! Venom Fang!
This is her little bar thing. Just assume she always has this. If you just give her energy regen, she's always going to have
Venom Fang!
Pretty much. While she has
Venom Rush!
She increases everyone's crit damage by 40% and hers by 10%. And then from her ultimate,
do you think we're weak? We'll snatch you up! Venom Web!
After she uses it, she activates Ether Veil Cold-Blooded. It lasts for 30 seconds and it increases your crit damage by, oh, wait for it guys, 5%. ZZZ, you shouldn't have. This is too powerful. This is way too strong. If you don't have her in electric team, she's giving your team a bunch of crit damage. And that's fine, right? Here's a bit of a side note though. Very early in the beta, her buffs also applied to physical agents, and her additional required physical or electric, not stun or electric, physical or electric. And this is more obvious when you realize, oh, when you play her in the story, she is paired with a physical attacker. That seems very intentional. And then she also has an Ether Veil. And Ether Veils are only useful for 2 characters. There are upcoming stage buffs in like Shield Defense that give extra bonuses with an Ether Veil, but they are not Cissia coded. They are Arya and Rupture coded. So that's Arya and Lucia basically. They are not buffs for Cissia because it's like, when you activate Ether Veil, increase your ether damage. It's like, well, Cissia doesn't do that. Like, she's not an ether damage dealer. Why would Cissia care about that? She doesn't. And the other one that only useful for is Yeshunguang and Arya. But like, are you really going to play Cissia and Arya in the same team? Probably not. You can always do that. That's probably not a recommended team. But then they took this away, so she no longer buffs physical agents. So it's kind of weird. Like, her ultimate activates an Ether Veil, and that Ether Veil is completely useless for pretty much any team. Seed doesn't want an Ether Veil. Yeshunguang would love more Ether Veils, but Cissia only buffs electric damage in her core, which we will get to very soon. Otherwise, she's just a crit damage buff. And that's fine. That's okay. Like, you can play Yeshunguang Cissia. That's totally fine. But it's a bit weird. They left this in her kit, but they changed her additional requirements. It's just weird. It's just odd. So that's some leftover stuff from the beta. The other thing, here to milk, you say it's purely for shill, but like her Ether Veil doesn't even shill anything. They are not for Cissia. So it's like, what's the point? You gave this character Ether Veils, and then all the upcoming buffs are shilling everything for Ether Veil that has nothing to do with Cissia. It's crazy. So let's read Cissia's core. This is the actually interesting part. With Venom, the squad's electric damage ignores 6% of the enemy's defense. If your energy region is higher than this number, then for each thing above it, increase it by 1% up to a max of 25% of enemy defense. So it starts at a base of 6% and it goes up to 25%. That's kind of interesting. That gets me thinking. And if you know me, you know I will do anything to play stupid, dumb, unoptimal teams. What does this mean? It means maxing out her energy regen gives 25% defense ignore to the team. I'm going to call this Defy. Keep it short and simple. This Defy only applies to electric damage. That's the one issue about it. If it was just to the team, hey, that'd be incredible. That'd be fantastic. But it's only to electric damage. That is pretty limiting. So let's see what we can do with that. This is why she feels niche, as I mentioned that before. And the only agent who can really utilize Cissia to her fullest potential is Seed. Seed wants an attacker who is not greedy for field time, and Cissia wants a main DPS who is going to be on field most of the time. They work pretty well with each other, but that's kind of boring, so let's have some fun. This is a team building theory craft discussion. This is not a gameplay guide. I'm not going to tell you how to play Cissia or the optimal way to play Cissia. Instead, we're going to ask some more interesting, more creative questions. Because here's the secret. Cissia is secretly a rupture agent. Like, what do you mean? Because we do have enough Defy in the game to reach 100%. And even if we don't get there, that's fine. If we get really close, like, oh, 95%, it's like, yeah, dude, that's fine. Like 95% defense ignore, that's perfect. That's wonderful. That's incredible. So here's the question. Can Cissia reach 100% Defy? The answer is yes. Yes, she can. So here's a more interesting question. Can the entire team get to 100% defense ignore? That's the goal here today. We are going to make the entire team a rupture team. Now, first, let's talk about pen ratio or pen percent versus Defy. They don't stack as you would like them to. If you have 60% pen percent or pen ratio and 60% Defy, an enemy with 100 defense would have 16 defense left over because you reduce their defense by 60% and then you reduce it again by 60%. Whereas if you had 100% of either of them, it would be 0. So sadly, Rena is not a great option for Cissia. Disclaimers, I am not claiming that any of these are good ideas. They are just creative ideas, and these ideas are pretty expensive. Not gonna lie, I will not be doing most of these. They are just fun little thinking exercises. Also, recent bosses are starting to have half of their defense. Normal bosses have 952. Now the newer ones have 476, and instead they have higher HP. And that means defense ignore isn't really useful against them. You can still try it, it's still usable, it's just not ideal. So with that out of the way, let's get started. Cissia investment. Cissia's Mindscape 1. The defense ignore from core passive increases to 140% of its original value. There is more to this, but we only care about this number here. That increases her defense ignore from 25 to 35%. This doesn't look like a big increase because it's really not, but there is more to this Mindscape that's not relevant to this discussion. There's also Cissia's W engine, which has a clause when you deal electric damage, you ignore a certain amount of the enemy's defense, and there is more to this as well. But this is kind of a self buff that changes the math of a lot of things. But for this discussion, we're trying to turn the team into a rupture team, so we will ignore this, but it's always an option. And because of how Cissia's kit works, if you just use Drill Rig with enough energy regen, you are getting the 24% pretty easily. So like, even if you don't get the full 25% of her base value, that's fine. You can easily get to 24%. Finally, Anton's Drill Rig has a user. Anton didn't even use Drill Rig. We now have a character who will use this thing. Yes. You can also just use Orphe's W engine to get to the full 25% if you already have it. That's totally fine. So on to Seed. Seed is the very obvious partner, and she's the obvious partner, one, because they synergize really well, two, they're rerunning at the exact same time. The game is basically screaming at you, please use these two characters together. But that's not why Seed is here. She's not here because she is an ideal partner. Seed is here because her Mindscape 2 is interesting. When Besiege is Seed's buff that is basically active all the time for both attackers. When Besiege is active for an agent, that agent's damage ignores 20% of defense. That's a pretty good increase. A 20% increase, that's nice. Granted, this is a Mindscape 2, that's pretty pricey. Next up is Suna. This is obviously Suna. I don't know what to tell you. Suna is the latest support in the game, and her Mindscape 1 says, when Cat's Gaze triggers and damages an enemy, the target's defense is reduced by 7% for 40 seconds, stacking up to 3 times. So that's a 21% defy. Now let's go to Orphe and Magus. What the heck is Orphe doing here? Well, if you read her additional, when another character in your squad is a stun or support character, aftershock damage dealt by agents with zeroed in ignores 25% defense. So Orphe technically counts. We will talk more about her because there is something silly later we can discuss with her. Qingyi, the reason Qingyi is in here, 1, because she is relevant, 2, we are close to 3.0 and the anniversary. We're not sure if 3.0 is the anniversary or if the anniversary is going to be 3.1. We're a bit iffy on that information right now, so I'm not trying to make a strong statement one way or the other. Regardless, they will likely just give out an agent that's in the shop just because they pretty much gave up on selling those agents anyway. Like, if Bernice is on a rerun, that would be cool, but like, oh boy, pull for the anomaly character when every anomaly fight just resists fire for some reason. You gave up selling this character, that's fine. They also gave up selling Qingyi and Jane. Well, they kind of gave up on selling these characters, except they did sell this character. They sold Jane. They gave you her swimsuit for free without rerunning her. So if you wanted to get this character, you had to spend 155 bucks. That's a pretty good strategy. I didn't fall for it. With that out of the way, Qingyi's Mindscape 1. If Flash Connect voltage is at its maximum, the attack will reduce the defense of the enemy it hits by 15%. Hey, that's something. And the reason this is relevant, it's like, well, what if you don't have Qingyi's Mindscape 1? Well, it's like, well, if you already have Qingyi, and if they're just going to give away an agent for free, like, hey, you can just get this. Nicole, this is Nicole. The best A rank in the game? Debatably? Who's better than Nicole? Nicole does a lot. Surprisingly, Nicole does a lot. Nicole's core F, when her enhanced bullets or energy field hits an enemy, the target's defense is reduced by 40% for 3.5 seconds. This is a really good debuff, but it's for a very short time, so you have to be managing Nicole's debuff. You don't have to be managing it. You should be managing this debuff regularly. Last and not least, Spectral Gaze. This one's odd because it's not an agent, it's a W engine. This is Trigger's W engine, and it can only be used by Trigger, very annoyingly, because it's actually good if you have Trigger. And if you don't have Trigger, then this is useless. When the equipper's aftershock hits an enemy, causing electric damage, the target's defense is reduced by 25% for 5 seconds. At rank 5, this increases to 40%. That's a big number. 40, this is basically Nicole. You are paying like what, 500 bucks-ish in resources, time and resources for a Nicole debuff? That's pretty good. That is all the agents in the game that reduce enemy defense. A lot of characters can reduce defense, but it's only on them. Like Miyabi ignores some of the enemy's defense, but that's not a team buff, that's a Miyabi buff. So now for the fun part. Here's the honorable mention. This isn't the fun part, but it is part of the fun. Back to Orphe. The reason I brought up Orphe was for this really dumb reason. She won't be included in the next section. And there's a very obvious reason. In theory, you can use a triple attacker team. That team is Soldier Zero Ambi, Orphe, and Cissia. In that team, Ambi would get the defense ignore from both of them. Soldier Zero Ambi would get Cissia's defense ignore. She would get Orphe's defense ignore. She would get Cissia's crit damage buff, which would buff Orphe's aftershock crit damage and stuff. Like, there is a potential synergy going on here, but that's not how any of this works, very unfortunately. And that's because Ambi and Orphe's additionals require stun or support, and Cissia is not either of those. That's why Orphe's not going to be on the next slide. You can try to do some dumb stuff with Orphe, like Orphe trigger Cissia. You can, but like what? You're buffing Trigger's aftershock defense ignore? Like, oh, watch out. It's not a good idea. I'm not going to stop you from trying it. I'm just going to tell you, hey, that's a not good idea in a not fun way because you're buffing Trigger. And now if you got a Mindscape 6 Trigger, go for it. I'm not going to stop you. But like, I know if you're watching this and you're like me, you don't get those Mindscapes. There's no way you got a Mindscape 6 Trigger. That's insane. You can still try to use this team. I might try it once just to get a feel for it. And you can pair Soldier Zero Ambi with Cissia anyway, because they're both electric. Cissia will buff Soldier Zero Ambi. You can do a hyper carry Soldier Zero Ambi team with Cissia. That should work. I would be shocked. I'll get it because they're electric. I would be shocked if Cissia Soldier Zero Ambi is awful. At best, it'll be great. At worst, it'll be okay. So let's tally all of these defense ignore numbers up. Cissia gets 25 to 35% if we ignore her W engine. Just for the sake of the math and keeping this simple, we are ignoring her W engine because that's only a self buff and we want to turn the team into a rupture team. Seed at Mindscape 2 gives another 20%. Suna's Mindscape 1 gives 21%. Chingy's Mindscape 1 gives 15%. Nicole gives 40% and Spectral Gaze gives 25 to 40%, depending on how much money you want to spend on this sucker. Now, here's a quick reminder. Cissia is a sub-DPS and an electric buffer. Seed is a DPS and a attack support. She supports attackers. She buffs attackers, they buff her. There's a two-way street going on there. Suna is an off-field support with a weird kit. The reason why Suna is weird is that her Cat's Gaze is treated as a triggering agent's damage and attribute. So even though Suna is not electric, the way Cat's Gaze is worded, pretend Suna switches into Cissia and Cissia deals the Cat's Gaze damage. Cat's Gaze damage will count as Cissia's damage, and because Cissia is already electric, it will benefit from the defense reduction. That's also why Game Ball isn't good on Suna. Cat's Gaze matches the element of the agent, but it's counted as that agent's damage and not the user's damage. And so Game Ball doesn't count because you aren't dealing that attribute damage. Technically, the current agent is, and that agent isn't Suna, so that's why Suna can't really make use of Game Ball. Yuzuha can. Yuzuha can use Game Ball. She can use it very well. I always keep that in my back pocket. And reminder, Chingy is an on-field stunner and basically a DPS. If you have been playing Chingy recently, you realize that you basically just build her as a DPS. That's basically what she is. You build a bunch of attack, you build crit rate, you build crit damage, and you build some impact. And you realize that, wait, I'm building an on-field stunner that is just a DPS. I'm just gonna build her as a DPS. Nicole is an on-field support because her debuffs are really short. She is a character you want to switch on-field regularly for her buffs. And because of that, you're perfectly fine just leaving her on-field. And finally, Trigger is an off-field stunner. So all together, we have a really tight-knit group. Sissy wants to be a sub-DPS and electric buffer, and we have a couple other buffers on this team and a couple other electric agents that want to be on field. So this is pretty cool. Now let's look at some of these team options. Basically, you pick from any of these 6 and enemies will have very low defense. Maybe not 0, but their defense will be incredibly low. Sissy is the auto-included one. Cissia, Chingy, Nicole. Cissia, Chingy, Trigger. Cissia, Chingy, Suna. Those are all teams you can use. Cissia, Seed, Trigger. Cissia, Seed, Suna. Cissia, Nicole, Trigger. Cissia, Nicole, Suna. Caveat, Nicole Suna means Cissia won't have her additional, so you don't get that crit damage buff for the team, but instead, you get a ton of stats from Suna and Nicole. So it's like a trade-off of, would I rather have some crit damage on these agents that don't really need it, or a ton of stats? So basically, these are the ones I recommend in this thought experiment, this thought exercise. We can get close to 100% with some of these teams. Cissia, Nicole, Chingy, Mindscape 1. That math comes out to 80%. And remember, Cissia's Mindscape 1 adds another 10%. So that comes out to 90. Hey, Cissia's Mindscape 1, Chingy's Mindscape 1, if you already have Chingy and you get her for free at the anniversary, that's not too bad. That's pretty good. Cissia, Seed, Mindscape 2, and Suna Mindscape 1, that comes out to a much lower number, that's 66%. It's not as high as you want it to be, but hey, you have Seed's Mindscape 2, you got Suna's Mindscape 1, that team's gonna demolish everything. I should have said this earlier. Obviously, Nicole's an ether agent. She's not electric, so she will not benefit from the super high defense ignore from Cissia. Nicole will still deal damage because she does enough damage. Her damage multipliers are actually pretty good. The next one on the list is Cissia, Nicole, Trigger. This is a pretty simple one because you just need Cissia and you need Trigger Spectral Gaze. And that gets you to 90%. And if you got Cissia's Mindscape 1, that's 100%. You just throw Nicole on field, Trigger's doing aftershock attacks, Cissia's doing some venom attacks. They got no defense. If you got Cissia's Mindscape 1, 0 defense. That's That's incredible. Granted, again, Nicole doesn't get this buff from Cissia. That's fine. Nicole has like what, 70% defense ignore or 65%. Ooh, watch out. That's totally fine. One last one. This is a very expensive team. Cissia, Mindscape 2 seed, trigger spectral gaze. That gets to 70%. But when Cissia is Mindscape 1 and spectral gaze is at rank 5, that gets up to 95%. This becomes a true rupture team. The enemy has no defense, and they're all electric, so they all benefit from this. Actually, no, Trigger doesn't benefit from it because Besieged buff only applies to the attackers. So Trigger doesn't become a true damage dealer, but that doesn't matter because Trigger's damage is too low anyway, so it's not too important. That's interesting. In conclusion, I do not recommend you spend your money on this. These are just ideas. Let me know your ideas down below. I listed some of mine. Let me see some of yours. My idea, I'm gonna try to bring back not Soldier Zero Ambi, regular Ambi. I'm gonna bring back Stun Ambi, DPS Ambi. I am going to resurrect her with basically Cissia carrying the team. But I'm gonna play DPS Ambi. Let's go. Subscribe if you feel like it. You don't have to. YouTube likes it, kind of. Only if you watch my videos does it really matter. If you don't watch my videos, don't bother subscribing. I mean, like, you're watching it now if you're watching this. If you don't subscribe, Cissia is going to break into your house and steal all your food. Not even your food. She's gonna steal your eggs. That's even more annoying. You could have stolen anything. You stole my eggs. I would appreciate it, but you don't have to. I'm close to 5K. And if you feel so inclined, you can support me by becoming a sponsor. That's a YouTube member. You become a sponsor of the channel. Or you can support this channel through super thanks or super chats. I would greatly appreciate it. Again, that's not required. But for those people who want to do it, that option is open. Shoutouts to my super sponsors. I Love My PC, Jam Jalopy, Superbro64, and Tactile-like. Thank y'all so much. So yeah, that's it for this video. My name's Yojimbo Blade, and I hope y'all have a blessed day. See you soon. It's a karaoke stream, but it's all Christian songs. Like Christian hymns. There is a fountain filled with blood drawn from Emmanuel's veins, and sinners crushed beneath that flood lose all their guilty stains. Growing up, the one hymn, like some nights they would be like, hey, pick a hymn out of the book and we'll all sing it. My number was always 806 because I knew 806 was Oh Canada. I was like, it's in the book. We gotta sing it. And they're like, Yojimbo, we are not singing Oh Canada. We're not doing that. Oh Canada, our home and native land.